Have you ever felt like you were constantly shifting, trying to fit in, but never quite finding where you belong? That was me. For years, I was a social chameleon, blending into any crowd that felt remotely safe. I wasn't sure who I was, but I knew how to mirror others, how to make them laugh, how to make them feel needed. It worked for a while. Moving schools in my teenage years, then later in my late adolescence, living in boarding school, then college again away from home, and eventually studying abroad. It all kept me so busy adapting that I didn't have time to stop and ask myself, who am I really? I thought I was thriving. I had friends everywhere, didn't I? But looking back, was it friendship or just survival? I was so desperate to be seen, to be heard, that I didn't stop to understand myself. Instead of exploring deeper relationships, I poured everything into academics, thinking success could fill the void. But what happens when you achieve the goal and still feel empty? Then came the hurt. Isn't it funny how pain has a way of catching up to you? I didn't understand my emotions back then. When someone hurt me, I didn't process it. I reacted. I blamed others for my feelings because it was easier than looking within. I pushed people away while quietly hoping they'd stay. Forgiving someone for their actions? Easy. Forgetting the way they made me feel? Nearly impossible. The anger lingered, whispering to me in the quiet moments, like a bad song stuck in my head. Eventually, I became isolated, not by force, but by choice. I disappeared from the lives of those around me, and in doing so, they disappeared from mine. For a long time, it was just me and God. Have you ever sat alone with your thoughts for so long that they become deafening? That was my reality. Every insecurity, every regret, every unresolved feeling, all of it stared back at me like an unblinking mirror. I realized something crucial in that silence. I was scared. Scared of confronting the truth, scared of making mistakes, scared of disappointing people. So I never set boundaries. Resentment became my armor because, in a twisted way, it felt safer than vulnerability. I wasn't just avoiding others. Eventually, I was also avoiding myself. But life has a funny way of shifting when you least expect it. Slowly, I began to change. Now, she's different. She's not perfect, but she's different. The new me, she doesn't chase people or try to fit into spaces where she doesn't belong. She stopped being the chameleon, and instead, she'd learn how to become herself. If my life is a boat, I'm no longer obsessed with finding a map or controlling the sails. I let the current take me. Some days are calm and some are stormy, but I've learned to trust the journey, embrace it. Isn't that what life is all about? Trusting the process. I greet what comes into my life with open arms, and when something leaves, I wave it off without clinging. I've also started listening to my body. For so long, I ignored it, pushing through exhaustion, ignoring signs of burnout. Now I pause. I ask myself, what do I need? What do I want? For the first time in my life, I'm letting my intuition guide me. Of course, as everyone would expect, my circle of friends also has gotten smaller, but it's intentional. I don't need to be surrounded by dozens of people to feel validated. Instead, I've built connections that are difficult sometimes, but are real and nourishing. For me, isn't it better to have a few people who truly see you than a crowd that barely knows you? Looking back, I see how far I've come. Where I once blamed others, I now reflect. Where I once held on to resentment, now I let go. Where I once feared solitude, I now embrace it. So who am I today? I guess someone who flows with life rather than fights it. Someone who welcomes the unknown instead of constantly fearing it. Someone who finally understands that peace isn't something you find out there. It's something you build within. And in this quiet, steady knowing, I've discovered the kind of strength that I didn't even know I had. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. This is enough.